Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to today's webinar, 6 Enterprise Mobility Priorities of Highly Effective CIOs Running Oracle PeopleSoft Enterprise. As I'm sure all of you who are on the webinar know, Oracle PeopleSoft is one of the most popular ERP systems available. It's considered a Tier 1 enterprise resource planning solution, and is used by large and upper end of the mid-sized market as a solution for a wide range of enterprise requirements, from financials to human capital management, asset management, and a number of other enterprise resource planning or ERP functions that you're all familiar with. For many organizations today, the challenge of creating mobile applications that leverage the underlying capabilities of back-end systems is very high on the priority list. And so today's webinar will take us into that subject area and allow us to really explore this in more depth. So we're ready to begin. We do ask that if you have questions or comments, that you type them into the chat box or the question and answer box that's available to you through the GoToMeeting console. Also, I would like to welcome Orgat, our co-presenter today, who will be providing us with a demonstration towards the end of today's session. Welcome, Or.
Hey, Glenn. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Thanks for joining us, and we thank each of you for joining us as well. We are recording today's broadcast, so this will be available to you and your colleagues as a matter of follow-up as well. So let's go ahead and begin today's session. The purpose is this session is to learn from CIOs who are paying attention to 6 enterprise mobility maxims. These CIOs were found to excel compared to their peers, and they found that these 6 areas for management attention made a real difference in their enterprise mobility strategies. So those 6 areas were security, integration, scalability, skilled resources, offline connectivity, and deployment management. And the CIOs who paid attention to these areas in particular were found to be ahead of their peer group in terms of their mobile implementation. So let's begin with that first topic in discussion of security. We found that this was actually very, very important to the CIOs in our group, and in fact, an effective strategy for enterprise security governance, of course, is going to reduce the risk of unauthorized access to IT systems and data. And so these highly effective CIOs placed a very high priority on it. They have a Chief Information Security Officer, or CISO. They institutionalized access and improved risk management security policies. And these highly effective CIOs view security governance as a matter of collaboration with the CISO, and not a subject for delegation. So they were active participants and aware, and had opinions and contributed to all of this. So these CIOs hold the CISO to a very high standard by ensuring that detailed written plans and policies for security are actually followed and observed. It was more than just having a plan. It was a matter of making it a part of the culture. So these CIOs care how business units, personnel, executives, and staff work together to protect an organization's digital assets, to prevent data loss, and protect the organization's public reputation. And we've certainly seen far too many stories in the news recently about organizations that have had major security breaches, and the consequences to the enterprise can be catastrophic financially and in terms of brand reputation. And so the importance of this, it really can't be overemphasized. It's a prerequisite to doing business today, and certainly enterprise mobility brings up new questions related to security, and we want to be sure that those are part of what we're looking at. So in the essential understandings, it's important to note that the compliance and regulatory environment of an organization often provides a framework for their enterprise security governance expectations. The mission, the culture, the management approach of the entire organization is also factored into security planning. But highly effective CIOs never compromised security for the sake of getting along. The best CIOs knew how to win over the CEO and board support for the costs associated with enterprise security governance. They also found that highly effective CIOs frequently were found to conduct simulated threats, surprise inspections, utilize external compliance experts, all of the things that went above and beyond in terms of making sure that they had an elevated sense of organizational awareness for security requirements. They did threat, vulnerability, and risk assessments. These were taken seriously, and they factored in the uniqueness of the company's business model and industry. They weren't just plain vanilla approaches to security. Quite often, they had specialized aspects to their planning. Well, we all know that with the rise of the internet, cloud, and enterprise mobility, enterprise security governance strategies have had to be significantly altered. But some of us are not aware of how that has taken place. In the past, centralized data processing approaches allowed an organization to focus on the hardening of the assets by protecting a central data processing physical location. The data center, had security guards and all kinds of things around it. And now, with the decentralization of enterprise computing capabilities, particularly with mobile devices, which are literally scattered all around, then the approach to security has to change. So highly effective CIOs understand that an organization must still remain focused on reducing the chance that physical assets owned by the company can be stolen or damaged. But obviously, mobile devices will be lost and stolen. So this certainty of loss has to be factored into security governance systems and plans. You know people are going to lose their phones. It doesn't matter how hard you try to tell them not to. It happens. They will be stolen. And so the security planning has to take that into account as a certainty, not as something that, you try to prevent it, but there's not only so much you can do, and therefore you just have to have alternate ways of securing the data, the applications, and so on. So traditionally, governance of enterprise security has included, the physical barriers, the locks, the fencing, the fire systems, lighting, alarm systems, security cameras, all those good things that most of us probably still have, certainly in large data centers. So mobile devices, however, bring up this new set of requirements, including inventory and asset management, the ability to do things like remote lock and wipe, application management, including rogue app identification, the creation of an enterprise data boundary within the device, what's within the boundary, what's outside the boundary, real-time roaming notifications, persistent logs and audit trails. All of these things are part of, an approach to mobile device management and mobile application management. They're going to be an important part of your security and governance planning and practices. So governance policies for mobile apps have to consider, of course, the same basic kinds of requirements for apps that in all situations. So user authentication is particularly important. So you need to review the apps that are going to be used in your enterprise for compliance with security practices for mobile user authentication. Now, acceptable approaches may combine encrypted passwords, location validation, which is sort of a new concept with mobile, physical device verification, and similar approaches to authenticate and identify the user, the device, and the context, including, of course, bioidentification, fingerprint scanning, and things like that might be a part of these approaches. And mobile devices having additional capabilities such as GPS, such as camera, and so forth give us new options and possibilities. Second major area of app-level security is the maintenance and management of user rights. So governance policies are going to allow us to include user authentication management, of course, and the apps themselves need to be looked at for compliance with user rights management security practices. Normally, the user rights are assigned and managed in each enterprise system. This is the way we've been used to doing it. PeopleSoft manages user rights for those that use PeopleSoft. But what happens when we suddenly have an API that's accessing PeopleSoft information through the PeopleSoft integration broker, and then we have a mobile app that's consuming information from that API. How are the rights for that mobile user managed? What are the differences that need to take place in our policies in order to deal with all of that? So rights for the same user may need to vary based on the context, whether they're using it at a secure desktop in a known location or if they're in a mobile context. You know, user rights may also need to vary based on whether the mobile device is in offline mode or online mode. Certainly, when it's in online mode, we have more capability for keeping the data secure on the server, simply using the device to view information and interact with the user. But when we're in offline mode, some of that data may actually get stored to the device in the device cache, and at that point, we have to make sure that approaches are taken for wiping that cache, for encrypting any information, of course, that's going to be on the device at any time, that kind of thing. Which brings us to a kind of our third area of app security that falls into the best practices, the idea of encryption. So we won't go into details here, but just suffice it to say that you need to support a variety of different encryption methods, such as those shown here, and that you need to be encrypted not only at the data level, but also at the transport layer level, so that as the information is going between the mobile device and the server, that everything is inaccessible to those who might have malicious intentions. So when we look at the next subject, which is the question of best practices for mobile application integration, here we're moving into areas where we do more than just meet the requirements of security planning and governance, but in fact start to go into some of the benefits that APIs successfully managed within an organization can bring for our mobile users. And so we found that in doing the integration to mobile devices, an event-driven architecture was an important requirement that users had, particularly with mobile devices. You never know when people are going to log on, off. The old world thinking of batch-oriented processing, scheduled interactions, more than likely doesn't work. That mobile user is expecting to connect, go online to the server, interact, get responses back from the server in that application that's revealing information that is stored in the PeopleSoft enterprise system. And so the importance of event-driven architecture in a mobilization strategy for PeopleSoft can't be overemphasized. It's also very important to look at making sure that we have straightforward methodologies for data transformation between that mobile app and the PeopleSoft enterprise system. They're obviously going to format information in different ways. We want to be able to pull that information in and out. We may be pulling information from more than just PeopleSoft Enterprise for a single mobile app. Maybe there's a third-party CRM solution in that environment as well. And so data transformation is certainly going to be a requirement. Disambiguation of information and data cleansing may also be a requirement. All of that needs to be looked at in terms of finding a platform that has that kind of flexibility. The third thing that we look at is the way ability to deal with multiple protocols. You know, some APIs are based on RESTful web services, some are based on SOAP, some are based on messaging queues, others have to use various transport protocols. You may even have application development components or architectural approaches that are basically compositing application logic on things like .NET or COM or J2EE. All of these various protocols need to be able to work together harmoniously when you're integrating a mobile app to PeopleSoft Enterprise, because we never know, although most of the time we're going to be using SOAP web services to interface to the PeopleSoft integration broker, there are other things going on in our enterprise environment that could require a different set of interactions across different protocols. And then we also want to provide a way to visualize all of this. One of the things that set apart the systems that were selected was the visualization tools. To be able to visualize the integration process between the mobile device and the back-end system, make it meaningful to business users on the one hand, but also to be able to drill down and execute business process notation in a way that was utilized. Something like BPEL, for example, would be an example of the type of systems that were found to be placed in these highly effective organizations. So working with mobile APIs, there are a lot of different categories of APIs. It's a very broad term. One useful way of looking at it in terms of mobile is that you have client-side APIs that allow you to work with things like barcode scanning on a device. You have server-side APIs that enable a server to do things like SMS communications. And then you have sort of enterprise application mobile support APIs that allow an enterprise app to interact with a mobile protocol, such as a geolocation data set from or to a mobile device. And this can be across multiple enterprise systems that might need to interact with that API. So the question, of course, is, does PeopleSoft have an API? The answer, of course, is yes. Most of you are familiar with the PeopleSoft integration broker, which offers a nice set of web service APIs. But in older versions, prior to 8.4, you're going to have the PeopleSoft component interface, which supports other kinds of component calls, and this is why we suggested that these can be important. Things like Java, C, C++, COM, web services, components or objects can be utilized in a number of integration platforms, but not all, so you'll want to look carefully at that. And then PeopleSoft application messaging is a long-standing standard in the PeopleSoft community that may also need to be used depending upon your version and the situation, and so this allows exchange via XML and flat files. So again, could be an important way. Which PeopleSoft API is best? The component interface API is best for programmers seeking to develop formal custom applications. So if you have an independent software vendor, for example, who's creating a bolt-on application, then being able to do Java calls might be important to them. For enterprise IT departments, probably the PeopleSoft integration broker allows you to follow SOA principles, eliminate expensive middleware, and when it comes to mobile devices, it's important that that integration platform be able to simplify the amount of data that's being sent to the mobile application. So you wouldn't want to just take all of the information that comes out of the PeopleSoft integration broker and all of the metadata overhead that's associated with that and push that to the mobile device. This is a very inefficient way. You're going to get slower response times. So looking at your integration platform, what people found was that they needed an integration platform that was just sending the essential data and metadata that the mobile app device actually needed in order to interact with the information, and of course, as we said earlier, in an encrypted fashion, but not burdening it with the typical heaviness of a SOA formatted XML document. And so that was an interesting revelation as we looked into this. Now, PeopleSoft application messaging is best for PeopleSoft users who are stuck on older versions. So you normally wouldn't use that unless you're in an older version. So what does an integration platform need in order to operate with PeopleSoft Enterprise? Here, you're going to need the ability to do things like publish and subscribe web services, ability to transform, format, and transport XML. You may have a requirement for doing composite application logic, including Java classes and objects, COM, C, C++, ability to monitor directories, parse text files, and perform basic CRUD operations on those text files could also be a requirement, again, depending upon your version. Certainly, in all cases, you're going to want a system and solution, an integration platform that provides business process modeling and then orchestration, both real-time, asynchronous, and scheduled batch jobs or batch processing. Automated data mapping and transformation is going to be an essential component of any integration platform. business process monitoring, the ability to see what's going on in that integration environment, maybe log that, add attachments to that log, and so forth. And then, of course, the enterprise security compliance, including the opportunity to deploy it optionally behind the firewall in an on-premise scenario versus simply cloud-based systems. And then enterprise-grade scalability is going to be very important. And we'll be talking about some of those components of scalability that we found to be used in these highly effective organizations. Now, SOA compliance and comprehensive technology protocols and adapter libraries is also a requirement, and of course mobile support for mobile platforms, support for iOS, Android, BlackBerry, and Windows, so that you can support, for example, a BYOD policy, or simply support the devices that your organization has already used and authorized. So we said we'd talk about scalability. We found 3 essentials of in-memory computing that are being utilized by these highly effective CIOs as they turn to in-memory computing as a way to deal with the onslaught of big data that's coming into the enterprise, especially as it relates to integration. Now, we'll talk about 3 things: dynamic scaling, co-location, and right behind. So with dynamic scaling, you have the ability to scale across multiple machine instances, whether those are physical or virtual. And this is done utilizing a capability called a space. So within memory computing, we found that they're working to store large amounts of data in a memory and achieve high-performance dynamic scaling, fail-safe redundancy, utilizing grid approaches. And data and business logic in the space are able then to replicate and partition across all of the machines in the data grid, providing high availability even when machines or software fails. So that's the concept of dynamic scaling, and it's achieved through co-location. Co-location is the idea that you have some memory and some processing available in each space. And so when you need to scale, you simply dynamically scale across multiple spaces. When you need high availability, if one space of co-located memory and processing fails, you have another one available that dynamically shifts to that environment. And the third piece of this then was right behind, because in order to really take advantage of in-memory data grid capabilities, you need to be able to move at the speed of memory, as opposed to being able to move at the speed of disk storage. And so rather than writing directly to SQL databases on disk, you need to be able to have that information executed in memory, and then be able to queue it and write behind the actual execution of the process, so that the processing goes on to whatever the next step is, and the system information that needs to be recorded to the hard disk is really like an archive. That becomes like your tape backup almost. And so it is being written behind as the system's already gone on very rapidly to other processes. So you need to be able to also then look at the requirements for offline mode. And we found that effective CIOs were taking an approach that allowed them to work with an always-on approach to mobile applications, meaning that they needed to use some offline programming capabilities in order to create apps that could work not only when they're connected to the server, but when, for whatever reason, bad signal or, flying on an airplane or whatever, that the device is offline. And that is a really key part. Now, just from the Magic perspective, we might insert here that we provide offline mode capabilities that allow you to do all the things you need to do, have in terms of application startup into offline mode, authenticating users, leveraging local resources, and then once communication is reestablished, doing the master-master synchronization, the metadata synchronization that's required. So these organizations also found that mobile created a huge burden in terms of skill sets required if they weren't very careful about how they went about it. So reducing the demand for skilled development resources without sacrificing app quality was high on the priority list of these CIOs, that they recognized early in the adoption phase that mobile environments and devices were highly fragmented. There's too many tools, too many programming languages required, too many layers of programming in terms of client, transport layer, server, and so forth. And so integration and so forth. So these vast differences between all the operating system versions and device formats and sizes and interfaces created huge differences in the variety of development tools and skills needed. And so this problem needed to be overcome by searching for solutions that reduced the number of skill sets dramatically, in some cases to a single skill set. And so these highly effective CIOs developed strategies to overcome the problem of platform and device fragmentation. So looking at it from a Magic perspective for a moment, we do provide a comprehensive solution that includes application platform, integration platform, mobile device management capabilities, and the professional services required to implement an end-to-end enterprise mobility solution. And this is the type of capability that these CIOs have been looking for in terms of being able to reduce their skill set requirements. So as we look at MDM requirements for these organizations, it's important to look at reliability. When it comes to mobile availability, you're going to need very, very high availability, and an MDM solution can help in looking at that. You're going to need to consider how customizable is the mapping and planning phase. How much customization can you build into this? So your company may be okay with it comes out of the box with your MDM solution, but a lot of organizations are going to, as we said at the very outset when we were discussing security, have unique security requirements that are unusual to their industry or simply to the way that particular company does business. And if the MDM isn't customizable, that can be a problem. Overall fit within the governance strategy of the organization is another requirement for evaluating your MDM, and I think at a common sense level, this is understood as being important to be able to adapt this system selected to your strategy, plan, and security procedures rather than adjusting your plans to what the MDM gives you as an option. So that's what I wanted to do today in terms of the formal presentation. What I'd like to do at this point is allow Orr to go ahead and take over and share his desktop, and when he does that, we'll actually be able to see a live demonstration. So Orr, you should have control now so that you can share your desktop with us.
Thank you, Glenn. Let me make sure that I present the right screen. Okay, so welcome to the technical side of the demo, everyone. My name is Orr. I'm part of the senior member of the professional services team here at Magic Inc. So for the technical part of today's demo, and what I wanted to do is to address some, if not all, of the things that Glenn was talking about in his part of the presentation. Is first of all to show you how when you develop a mobile application, when you develop an integration project that can answer all your needs for your integration between any types of applications and data sources that you may have in your organization, the set of skills that you need in order to do that in Magic XPI, XPI and XPA is significantly easier and smaller than you would in any other platform. Just for the, if you take an example of developing a mobile application that would be able to run on multiple platforms, Android versus iOS, you need right there and then to know both Java and how to develop in Xcode, just for those two operating systems. What happens when it comes to integration? Where would you want the integration platform to run? And when you develop in Magic, it's all done in a single set of skills, using a single set of skills, and in a very intuitive and easy to learn manner. Our basic trainings on the platforms that I'm going to show you is usually around 3 to 4 days. So let's look first at the mobile side of things. To develop in mobile, we develop in Magic XPA. Now let's differentiate the two types of platforms that we provide. Magic XPA is the application development platform. This is where we develop applications. They can be desktop applications, server-side applications, mobile applications, and so on. The idea is to have the development done in one location, and the deployment can be done on multiple environments. So the Magic XPI platform, let me take you to my Magic XPI development server, provides a studio that lets you develop, for example, this mobile application. We're actually looking at the code as we speak, but we're not looking at dirty code. It's not Java. It's not. I don't have to define different classes and import stuff. It's a very easy to use studio. Lets you develop in what you see and what you get methodology for developing the actual forms, the actual UI for your mobile application. Let's dive into something now. This is just an example of a mobile application that we've developed for a pharma app. This is still from the development stage. That's why we have the Magic logo on top. And it's a very easy to use form editor. As I said, what you see is what you get. If I drag an icon somewhere, I can add a button. Everything that I do by adding controls and so on is immediately occurring on the application. And then it's a matter of adding logic to each button, and we can add an event to each button. Let's do a no, because I don't want to say what I just did. And each event will call a program in turns, and each program has its own logic. For example, go to the database, fetch the information, all done very intuitively by using SQL queries. Magic provides a native gateway that lets you connect to your databases as you would from any other native client. Meaning, if I want to fetch information from MS SQL, I would use the Magic MS SQL gateway. It would allow me to run the same select, execute the same procedures as I would from any other client. So if you know how to fetch the data from anywhere else, it would be just as easy to do it from here. That's for the mobile side of things. Now, what's the big advantage of using Magic XPA? Everything that we've done here eventually gets translated into XML metadata. Everything that you add, every movement of an icon, everything that you do within Magic XPA is saved as XMLs in a source folder somewhere. It's all represented as metadata. What is the big advantage of it? Magic provides you engines that will be able to read these XMLs, and execute the logic accordingly. Those engines can run, Magic provides the engines that can run on various types of softwares. We have one engine that would run on iOS, another one that would run on Android, another one that would run on Windows Mobile, and so on. And each one of these engines acts as a native client, gives you the capability to use the native tools of the software that it's running on, the hardware that it's running on. For example, if I'm running on a mobile app, if I'm running this on iOS, it lets me access the GPS if I need, the camera if I need, to scan barcodes as Glenn mentioned, and so on. So it's a develop once, deploy on multiple environments, and on each environment run as a native client that can access all the different capabilities of the hardware that it's running on the device that it's running on. Now, how do we integrate our mobile application? This was a sneak peek to our mobile application. How do we integrate that mobile application to a backend server somewhere? For that, as we've said, we have a single set of tools that allows us to do it. We have an integration platform, Magic XPI, I stands for integration, that lets you do that again in a very intuitive manner, a very easy manner, and also inherits all the capabilities of running as a native client anywhere. Meaning whatever I develop in Magic XPI, again, is translated into XML metadata and can run on Linux, Unix, Windows, you name it. So this is our studio in Magic XPI, and it's again a very intuitive tool. This time we actually connect to backend applications. So this tool provides you different adapters or connectors. It lets you call the applications that you want to integrate. It lets you use an adapter that connects to the mobile application. It lets you use an adapter that connects to the PeopleSoft side of things. It lets you use an adapter that provides an API that someone else can call. It lets you use an adapter that integrates into SharePoint, into Salesforce. What I've opened here is an integration project that integrates PeopleSoft to Salesforce. So the idea was to show you how such an integration is carried out in real time, and then discuss the effort. How easy was it to run that integration? So let's look at an integration engine running in the background in real time. You run Magic XPI. This is where I've actually developed the logic. We'll dive into that shortly. When you run an integration platform, an integration project, as an integration, it's seamless. It doesn't have a UI. No one uses an integration. No one logs in to an integration. People are using their mobile application on one side. People are using PeopleSoft on the other side. Maybe Salesforce for our sales team and so on. The users of Salesforce don't even care that there is an integration platform running somewhere in the background, connecting Salesforce to PeopleSoft, connecting Salesforce to my mobile application, and just for that reason, that integration is something that should run on a box 24/7, have full high availability, full clustering capabilities for failover scenarios and so on, because it just connects applications that we're using. On the other side, if I'm CIO and I want to if I'm a member of the IT team in general, I want to be able to see what the integration platform is doing. So when you run Magic XPI, you also get a monitor that lets you see line by line execution of transactions that were carried out by your integration platform. So let's see a real-life demo. Let me log into my PeopleSoft, and this part of the integration integrates vendors from PeopleSoft into Salesforce. So I'm just going to do a quick search, and I'm going to select, for example, this Robert guy, and I'm going to change something in it. I'm going to do a correct history, and I'm going to go to the address tab, and I'm going to change something in the address. He no longer lives in 707 Main Street, he lives in 101 Main Street. Now, when the user of PeopleSoft made such a change, he doesn't know how, he doesn't care how the information travels all the way to the other systems, but it's important that it does. Because the user of PeopleSoft just talked to the customer on the phone, the vendor on the phone, and understood that the address was wrong. So when he hit save, he wants the information to travel to the other users of other applications. So the information, while we click save, is picked up by the integration platform that is currently running in the background and is pushed to Salesforce. How do I know that? I can look in the monitor. I can see that the record was added. Line by line, I can see what was added. I can add user-defined messages that would actually show me the ID of the object that was affected in Salesforce. I can take that, copy, then let me take you to my Salesforce instance that was open at the beginning, and let's travel to that object. As you can see, the Robert Half object has a new address, 101 Main Street, Just to prove you that it keeps on running, it keeps on doing the same integration steps as we go along. We'll go back into the development box. I'll go back to my vendor and I'll change the address again. Now it's going to be 99. He just moved again. I'm going to click Save. And again, there is a process that is running in the background, picking up the request here. And if I'll go back into my Salesforce, scroll up and hit F5, you're going to see that the address just changed again. So we have an integration platform that was running in the background that connected the two applications, picked up record, and did something based on the logic that we wrote. How did we write the logic? What was the effort in writing my mobile application, my integration application? How much time and effort do I have to put into developing using the Magic toolset? Let's take a look at the Magic XPI Studio. Sorry, I'm in the wrong box. And let's look at the actual project that is currently running in the background. What was the effort? Oh, we skipped something out. It also sends an email just on the way when a new record is when a record was changed. So to integrate between my PeopleSoft application and Salesforce, I used the web API that is provided by PeopleSoft, and in PeopleSoft I have the capabilities of invoking someone else's web API, and this is what we did here. I provide a trigger, a sniffer that PeopleSoft buttons can call once they're hit. For example, when I hit save in PeopleSoft, this sniffer was hit with the full set of information that came from PeopleSoft. Now, as Glenn mentioned, I don't want to take the full set of data and push it to my destination application. All I want to take is a subset of the data, what I need the most. So for that, I use a Salesforce object, a Salesforce component, sorry, and this is how we develop in Magic XPI. We have full set of adapters and connectors that lets you connect to various applications. So I took the Salesforce one. I also took a SharePoint one because this integration also integrates into SharePoint. And now all I have to do is develop with it. How do I develop in Magic? I configure. It's a code-free environment. All I have to do is to know what it is that I want to do. I want to configure accounts. What object am I working with? Accounts this time. What do I want to do with it? Query, update, create. I want to do an upsert. An upsert is an operation available in the Salesforce native API. We consume only native APIs when we talk to applications. Where an upsert lets you update or insert depending on does the object already exist or do I need to create it. So if I create a new object in PeopleSoft, it will be created in Salesforce. If I change an existing one, as you've seen, I'll update that. So all I have to do is decide what I want to do with it. Based on what field do I want to upsert, it's an external ID, and hit OK. This leads us to the next step where we have source to destination mapping. I define the source to be the XML coming from PeopleSoft. I define the destination to be my Salesforce. And all I have to do now is click map. It's a node-to-node mapping, as simple as it gets, between my two applications. All I have to get is the schema. And the good thing is Magic gets the schema for you. When you define a resource like Salesforce and define an object on that resource like accounts, Magic will go and fetch the description of that account. It'll go and fetch the description of that account on your Salesforce account, not on someone else's. So if you've defined a user-defined field in Salesforce, for example, you will grab those user-defined fields. All those fields exist on my Salesforce object and only on my Salesforce account object because I've created them myself, like test, SLA, JDEID, and so on. All of them are used for other integration needs, for example. If you're a bit familiar with Salesforce, you know that the user-defined object is the prefix of __C. This is how we know that it's a user-defined object, field, within an object. We can also work with user-defined objects altogether. So it wouldn't be account, it will be account __C, a different object. And I can set my own fields to it. and so on. So how did we connect to application? My XML source that came with the request from PeopleSoft, my destination application nodes that I can map directly into, and as Glenn mentioned, I only take the data that I need by mapping node to node. Now here's a cool example. Name in PeopleSoft in the XML come in two different nodes, name 1, name 2, last name, first name. In Salesforce, name is a single node that represents full name. So it's not only a matter of being able to connect source to destination, we need to have the capability of manipulating the data along the way, of making changes to it, of functioning based on it, maybe even going to another database and doing a query based on that data. So the way to do it in Magic XPI is very easy. All we have to do is connect the nodes from my source to my destination, then double-click my destination node and hit the function button. Here I do a very simple thing, trimming the name 1, adding space in the middle, and adding the name 2. Say I want to concatenate another object that another node from the source that I just connected. I can do another and, space, and select that node from my node list. I'm not limited to those functions alone. I have over 600 or so functions that let me manipulate the data in whatever manner I need. Only take the left 3 characters, change the field from alpha to numeric, change the format of a date from Julian to XML format to Oracle format. So all of those options exist either by adding simple text or by using standard functions that exist in a single set of skills that you need when you develop both in Magic XPI and in Magic XPA. That's it about the integration development. About running the Magic XPI integration project, and about running your Magic XPA mobile application. Magic XP, the Magic Suite comes with the in-memory data grid that Glenn mentioned. The in-memory data grid is basically the infrastructure that Magic is running on. It lets you use multiple servers and use all of those multiple servers in RAM memory in order to create one big in-memory data grid. What you can do is have the Magic XPI, the Magic process running on an in-memory data grid, such as I've just described, in a way that if something happens to one of the servers, the process will still run on another one. So we give you out of the box, very easy to configure, active clustering of a process that has zero downtime if one of the server fails. And I'm not talking about the process that fails, which of course we can fix. I'm not talking about the engine not hitting something, a request not coming in the right time. I'm talking about the full server failure, which we have active clustering out of the box for using the in-memory data grid. Everything in the process is handled in memory, meaning transaction times are extremely fast using that technology, and everything that I've just mentioned can be, we elaborate about it in other demonstration that we provide. Of course, it's all documented in our documentation. You can find it online and so on. If you have any questions, feel free to write them down. Glenn, back to you, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you, Or. Appreciate the presentation. You might want to just leave your screen up in case any questions relate to something that you need to show. The first question coming in is, which PeopleTools version is required to work with Magic?
It doesn't really matter. Because we're using standard APIs to communicate with PeopleSoft, we're not limited to a version. Not only that, we are not limited to a version. If you wrote a project on a specific version and then decided to upgrade your PeopleSoft to a newer version, the functionality available by PeopleSoft can be extended, but is not overwritten, meaning the project, the logic that you already wrote for the needs of your integration will remain the same. You can reuse it if you decide to upgrade to a newer version. That's what we call future-proof.
Okay, and then the next question, are the mobile apps read-only?
No, of course not. I mean, assuming I understand the question correctly, mobile apps can, of course, push data the same as you would from any other API. A mobile app is eventually an application. It communicates to the integration platform using the same types of adapters and connectors. And the data that comes from the mobile app can, of course, be written into any other type of application, can be used in order to fetch information from other applications and so on. It's in no way or how read-only application.
Okay. Just once again, a reminder, if you do have an additional question, go ahead and type it into the chat box or the question box, and we will try to get to those questions. Okay. Next question. How much does it cost? Well, I guess I probably should answer that one. Pricing is separate for the mobile solution and the integration solution, so those are priced separately. It's probably a little more complex than we can explain on the phone, on the webinar. What I would invite you to do is to contact us and, describe your scenario, the number of users, and then also the number of transactions that you're expecting. Because on the integration side, it really depends more on the volume and throughput of transactions, which will determine the number of threads or spaces that are required. And then on the mobile side, it's based on the number of devices. So we can look at it from both perspectives in a conversation with you and get you a more accurate answer to that question. Good question, though. All right. And I don't see any other questions coming in. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and thank you very much, Or, for your demonstration.
Thank you, Dan, for having me.
Okay. Have a great day, everyone, and we look forward to joining you again soon on another Magic Software webinar.